You know, many people online are saying that Chris Jericho, when all the allegations came out with Vince McMahon, with the NDA, with the lawsuit being filed by Janelle Grant, that it was supposed to be a 3 million NDA, she'd only been paid 1 million. A lot of people online were saying that Chris Jericho at that point would have had there'd been a sigh of relief there with Jericho, with what the stuff that came out about him allegedly having an NDA himself. It was kind of funny that Jericho butted in on all this stuff to do with the elite and CM Punk and Ace Steel that really had nothing to do with him. I guess other than that, he probably kind of had it in for Punk because CM Punk never has, in all the years he's been in wrestling around Jericho, has rolled the red carpet out for him. But he got involved and then he responded to a tweet. He tweeted back to Punk's lawyer about, oh, I didn't sign an NDA or something like that. And this is all on Christmas Day. And then he gets involved in that for no real reason. But then later on, we find out that Chris Jericho allegedly has an NDA. This was Nick Hausman, and I believe he had tweeted something about it at the time. And then later on, he has like a podcast, YouTube channel, whatever. He mentioned stuff about this and stuff about, oh, he's heard about stories over the years about Chris Jericho, and then he says it's very similar to Harvey Weinstein. He makes a comparison there with Jericho to Weinstein, and that's quite a bit of a strong comparison to make. Considering Weinstein with all the charges that he had, you're talking about 80 plus women that, he had, R-word sexually assaulted. Um, this story in question, people have said online that allegedly what happened, and it seems to be from certain Twitter accounts of people who are very much in the know, that Chris Jericho invited the woman Kylie Rae, the women's wrestler Kylie Rae, back to his hotel room. But it was, I guess, they understand that other people would be there, and it's maybe go to over creative for her character or whatever. But she gets to the room, and it's just him, and he makes a pass at her, and then she freaks out. And the AEW shows there was NDA chants, there was Kylie Rae chants. He was getting booed even though he's a babyface. But with this, one of Jericho's probably biggest detractors is Jim Cornette, who, funnily, Jim Cornette had worked alongside Jericho when Jericho was very early on in the business, Jericho and Lance Storm. But Cornette's not a big fan of Jericho at all. And Jericho, I think a lot of it has to do with maybe his being a Republican, being a supporter of Trump. His wife was there at the Capitol riots in January 6th or 7th, 2021. And Cornette's a big Democrat. But Cornette, on his podcast with his co-host Brian Last, they got into this stuff with at the time with Jericho and the NDA that he allegedly has. So I'm just going to play this clip now.
Nick Hausman responded to Chris Jericho's tweet. Nick Hausman, to the best of my knowledge, wasn't involved in all this, saying, what about NDAs you make other people sign? We talked about that on the last show. There's a mysterious comment. What does that mean? Who is Chris Jericho asked to sign an NDA and why? This led to some people, and I'm going to pull up the tweets, going back to something from 2019, from the beginning of AEW. One of the first AEW stars signed was someone you may remember, Kylie Rae, I believe was her name.
Yes, not to be confused with, there was also a Kylie Rae, I think, at one point.
Well, I think she was on the very first pay-per-view. It was the real early, it was before Dynamite. It was the early days of AEW. They weren't yet on TV. And despite seemingly being presented as one of the top women there, she quickly left the company and left wrestling, it seemed like, for a time, to reappear and at times leave other companies, which always made people wonder what's going on. I believe, and if I'm wrong, I apologize, but I believe she has spoken in the past, or at least on social media, written about struggles with mental health, which is certainly something you feel bad when you hear about. You hope someone deals with it.
And also something that you don't need in the wrestling business. So if she did leave wrestling, and I don't know if she's wrestling now, but she, as you mentioned, she left a couple of companies probably to deal with that, because you can't do both at once. Let's face it.
So this Jericho stuff caused people to go to this Kylie Rae stuff. Apparently, back in 2019, when things happened, at least amongst wrestling insiders, there were rumors that something may have happened. Now, she has not said anything.
Right, so yeah, Kylie Rae hasn't said anything on it. But with this, though, she did, there was some tweet that it was someone speculating that she was the woman in question about this, with what Hausman was speaking about on his podcast, and then she just left a heart emoji. And I believe it was a few days later, Hausman left a heart emoji back to her. But then again, if there's an NDA, what can she say about this? She can't directly talk on it, but maybe that just one little emoji, says it all, perhaps.
The only thing I've seen from her was she gave a star, a heart.
She's not Meltzer.
Well, not a star, a heart, or whatever the Twitter like is.
Like a happy heart emoji thing.
She's done that to a couple of the things about this. But let me go to the actual Twitter order of events. Nick Hausman went on his show, which he has, and he said that there are a lot of stories about Chris Jericho that will find their way out over time, and that people, when they're ready to tell those stories, they will. And then he compares Jericho to Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein, for those
now, was this in physical appearance or behavior? Because, Chris has put on a few pounds, but come on.
Again, I think there needs to be some clarity. Or is it about just the idea of someone powerful who's brought down? Harvey Weinstein specifically raped a bunch of women, sometimes in their own home, but probably famously, notoriously, in his hotel room. He would get them to come back to his hotel room by whatever means necessary and then assault them. We're not saying that. I just want to say this right now. Nick Hausman said it. We're talking about it.
Stupid adverts, but yeah, Hausman did talk about this, but Hausman didn't actually mention Kylie Rae, by the way, just to say that, he did not name Kylie Rae, but then someone speculated that it was her on Twitter. Just waiting for these stupid adverts. Hausman did not say Kylie Rae, though.
That sounds like it does sound, even if I don't think anybody can accuse us of being Jericho's press agents, but that does sound a little extreme.
But I just want to make sure whatever comes out. I'm not the one saying Jericho's Harvey Weinstein.
I don't know it for a fact, but a lot of people saying it. What do you just go on? What did Nick Hausman have to say now that you've credited or blamed him, whichever one it was?
Well, I'm not sure what his update on what he said is, but then after that, Jim, a tweet went out. I don't know who this account is. It's blurred now here in this image I have. So here's the deal. You don't quit the hottest fed going today, AEW, without reason. I have it from people in the know that Kylie was asked to go to Chris Jericho's room with the understanding that others would be there. When she got there, it was just him. He made a pass at her. No other details are given. That says that in parentheses, by the way. And she freaked out. So, again, don't know where that's coming from, but that was tweeted out, and it went everywhere. Chris Jericho was trending, I think it was like over 40,000 tweets about this. So, it was everywhere.
Well, he finally got the attention he's been looking for.
Then, apparently, hold on, these are all the tweets in order, including all my tweets making fun of Jericho, so I got to go past this. Well, I guess that's it. Now I'm just seeing other people are tweeting. Kylie Rae hearted one of the articles about this, and Nick Hausman hearted that. So now this story starts going around.
I've really never heard those fucking English words put together in that order before.
This whole thing is just ridiculous, the way it came out, the way it's happening. Again, every party involved could end this real quick by saying it did or didn't happen, or there is something or there isn't something. Instead,
well, but no, not every party, because if poor old Kylie Rae, as the story goes, and we'll talk about this, has signed an NDA or signed an NDA in order to secure her release from AEW, because that's part of the story, the rumor, whatever you want to call it, then she can't say anything. That's why she can only reply with little smiley hearts or whatever the fuck, and maybe, I don't know, chocolate covered donuts and whatever else they send out these days. But that's the issue now, is that has Jericho, trying to be the renegade, trying to be, the macho guy, I don't sign NDAs, has that suddenly pissed off enough people who knows that he has signed an NDA at least, that they've...
Yeah, well, you think that would come back to bite you on the backside, and then him going to say, bragging like, I never signed an NDA with that whole brawl that happened, but then he had an NDA from back in the early stages of all elite wrestling. Yeah, it's crazy, and I suppose with his stuff, what people are saying though is that Tony Khan had to get it covered up. That was the early days of AEW. If it came out, it'd muck up their TV deal. He was the big star, Jericho, and yeah, I guess they had to do that. When you think of Tony Khan, though, all the stuff, Tony being up on his high horse and tweeting stuff about Vince and all his stuff, it's like, well, don't throw stones in glass houses, pal, and Tony Khan's another one when he always, anytime he's asked difficult questions, he gets very touchy and he can't handle it. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff about him. As time's gone on, I don't think he's the big savior that he was kind of made out to be initially when AEW started in 2019. But with Kylie Rae, I was just looking at her Wikipedia. So Kylie Rae, she's born in 1982. So this stuff, this is Jericho potentially could have hit on a girl that's 22 years younger than him, and with Kylie Rae going down that, yeah, basically though, she was part of the inaugural event of AEW, Double or Nothing, and a match with Britt Baker, Awesome Kong, and Nyla Rose. She was advertised to compete against Leva Bates at Fyter Fest, but then she was replaced by Ali. And then during a media scrum at All Out, Tony Khan announced she had requested her release, which was subsequently granted, and that the split was very amicable. And with this, it just seemed very out of nowhere. They seem to be quite high on her initially. I can remember vaguely Cody Rhodes speaking about her, kind of like saying that this is like AEW's version of Bayley, but she's actually more genuine than Bayley, and something along those lines. So it just did seem to come right out of the blue, that she had decided that she doesn't no longer want to be there just after one show. It does seem a little odd, don't you think? So this guy Nick Hausman, though, and I'm no fan of Nick Hausman, so he did comment on this later, and some people maybe say he's backtracking, and maybe, I don't know, Jericho is threatening him with legal action, I don't know. But with this Nick Hausman clip here, so I will just play this Hausman clip here so you can see what he had to say on it. So
Jericho misconduct allegation story. Now, obviously, a clip from our show went somewhat viral shortly after we recorded, talking about the Chris Jericho situation. Right now, I want to be very clear that my opinions of Chris are my opinions of Chris. I've heard a lot of things over the years. I don't personally like Chris Jericho. I think that's pretty obvious at this point. I think that there's a lot of issues there. There are other people that when issues come to the surface, it can take away from the legacy that they've created. And that is just a concern that I have for Chris. And that is all I ever meant by my comments. And that then elicited a thread, that clip, where other people were starting to allude to previous allegations against Chris, sexual misconduct allegations, some of them involving, I hate to say this because I have not personally mentioned her, and I really would like everybody to respect her privacy, and it's like so beyond at this point.
I think if anybody wants to know who it was, they can go look it up.
Yeah.
So there you go there. But the thing, I mean, with Hausman though, Hausman's saying all this, but at the same time, Hausman's saying about how he said before that, a lot of stories are going to come about Chris probably down the line, and that when people are ready to tell their story. And then the whole Harvey Weinstein comparison. So people are obviously going to put two and two,
Jericho.
people are going to put two and two together there. You know what I mean? And with this again, I don't know if it was just something where he was slightly backpedaling, that maybe there was Jericho or someone there with a very sternly worded letter or email or something. I don't know. That maybe scared him off a little bit, but it doesn't sound good. When you're saying Jericho like Harvey Weinstein, what everybody's going to think right away. You know what I mean? And most people would think, are people going to think a predator? You know, the whole thing with Jericho, it might have been like if it's true, this stuff with Kylie Rae, like a casting couch type thing, which is that was bloody prevalent in Hollywood. But it's not like we've ever heard stories like this before about Jericho or rumblings. Yeah, sure, he might like to party. He maybe fancies himself as like a rock, a rock star, even though that's his side thing that he does with Fozzy. But I don't know. I'm not sure about this one, but there is an interview out there with Kylie Rae does with Sean Ross Sapp, and she's saying that that she had a great time in AEW. That she connected, I think, with Brandy Rhodes. She said she got along with her, and yeah, it didn't sound like she had a traumatic experience from All Elite Wrestling. That because you think of something real bad that had happened, and it maybe triggered like mental health problems that were already there before. She probably wouldn't have been going on a podcast giving these like gushing, tributes to like people that there in AEW and then kind of like the company in general. I don't know if she would have done that. But from what they're saying though, it was basically like she was asked to go to Jericho's room. But the thing I'm wondering though is like, did Jericho ask her directly, Kylie Rae? Or was this something she was asked by like someone on Jericho's like team or whatever, is no pun intended, inner circle? So that's a bit, because let's say if it was just Jericho himself and he finds her attractive, wants to, even though it's totally immoral, he's a married man, but okay. But then if it's like, let's say it's someone that's doing that for Jericho, doing his dirty work, so to speak, that's pretty dirty too. That some like other people maybe that they're involved and are complicit. But yeah, there's quite a dark side, a seedy side to wrestling. It's maybe you hear these stories more about in music and Hollywood and what have you, but there's still that real bad side to wrestling as well. And there was the whole speaking out movement back in 2020. So I don't know, but I mean they're probably glad though in a way AEW that this stuff's gone away with all the Vince stuff, the Vince McMahon stuff. But I was watching Vince Russo's show, and one of the guys that's on Bin Hameen, he was saying that the reason why AEW haven't been like firing any shots and making digs in relation to this is because that he thinks that there's people there in AEW, could be high up, I don't know, people like stars there, that they've got similar stuff like that on them with, I don't know, sexual misconduct, NDAs, and that's why they're keeping quiet. So I don't know, could there be something to that? Is that why AEW and Can, for the most part, has been keeping Stum about this whole thing with Vince and Janelle Grant? I don't know. But that's my video for now, guys. So feel free to like, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are on all this stuff here with Chris Jericho. And do you think that Chris Jericho, that he really does have an NDA with this? But that's me for now, guys. Thanks. Bye.